21-year-old's final Instagram post before fatal 130-foot bungee fall in Brazil sparks shock. A 21-year-old woman's tragic death during what was meant to be an adrenaline-filled bungee jumping experience in Brazil has shocked the world, especially after her final social media post took on a haunting new meaning. Now we explore the truth, the mystery, and every detail of this story in our AI podcast.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today, our mission is to unpack a deeply unsettling incident out of Brazil. It's a story that really forces us to examine that fragile, invisible line between adventure tourism and catastrophic negligence.
Yeah, it's a very difficult but necessary topic. We're going to
Yeah.
be pulling directly from a really disturbing news report covering a tragedy at a popular extreme sports site.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this. Because, when you really think about it, whenever we sign up for any kind of extreme sport,
Like a zip line on a tropical vacation or skydiving.
exactly, or bungee jumping, we're essentially engaging in this very strange psychological transaction. We're paying good money to buy the illusion of danger.
That's a great way to put it. The illusion.
Right. I mean, you stand on that ledge, your heart is just hammering against your ribs, palms sweating, and your brain is screaming at you that you are in mortal peril. But beneath all that biological panic, there's this quiet, rock-solid assumption.
The assumption that you're safe.
Yes, you're trusting absolutely and implicitly that the safety net is there. You want to feel like you're cheating death when in reality, you're just, safely suspended above it.
It is a highly curated experience of terror.
Yeah.
And the entire adventure tourism industry relies on that exact contract. The
Yeah.
customer provides the adrenaline, the willingness to step off the ledge.
Uh-huh.
And the operator provides the invisible, infallible infrastructure of safety. I mean, we don't check the tensile strength of the carabiners ourselves.
Oh, definitely not. I wouldn't even know how to do that.
Right. We don't calculate the load-bearing capacity of the ropes. We simply outsource our survival to the professionals strapping us in. We just assume that because money changed hands, the risk has been neutralized.
It's just a given.
Exactly. So in looking at the source material today, we are going to be examining not just the timeline of the specific tragedy, but really looking at why it highlights a much broader systemic issue within the thrill-seeking industry.
Because things didn't just go a little wrong here.
No, not at all. When a system designed to keep humans alive fails this completely, it is never just one isolated mistake. It's a cascade of failures. It's a fundamental breakdown in that exact contract you just described.
Yeah. And we need to start with the victim here.
Yeah.
Because the context of who she was and what she was doing right before this happened, it carries this heavy, almost unbearable psychological weight.
It really does.
We're talking about Maria Eduarda Rodriguez de Freitas, who was 21 years old. And here is the detail from the reports that really, it just stops you in your tracks. She was a physical education and sports management student.
Yeah, that background is absolutely crucial to understanding the profound irony of this situation. I mean, she wasn't someone completely detached from the mechanics of physical activity or sports organization.
Right. She knew the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Exactly. She was actively studying the frameworks that govern these very activities.
It's like a mechanic getting onto a roller coaster that hasn't been bolted down. When you study sports management, you're studying the systems, the regulations, the logistics of keeping athletes and participants safe.
You inherently understand that behind every athletic endeavor, there has to be a protocol.
Right. There are checklists. So her trust in the system wasn't just blind, it was an educated trust. She assumed the industry she was studying was regulated and functioning properly.
She assumed the people on that bridge were operating under the same professional standards she was reading about in her textbooks.
Exactly.
What's fascinating here is how that educated trust manifests in our behavior right before we do something terrifying. If we look closely at the source material, moments before she arrived at the jump site in Limeira, which is in São Paulo state, she posted a story on Instagram.
Oh, man. This part is just so tough to read.
It is. It was meant to be completely lighthearted. She wrote, "Who was the crazy person who let me jump off a bridge?"
It just, it gives you chills to hear that now. It's the modern ritual, right?
Yeah.
You document the fear, you post a joke, you do the jump, and then you post the triumphant photo afterward.
But the joke only works if the safety net is real.
Right. Exactly.
Psychologically speaking, making nervous jokes is a classic tension diffusion strategy. We see it across all high-stress scenarios. When we're about to hand our physical safety over to a stranger, we use humor to mask our intense vulnerability.
Because we're terrified.
Yeah. We mock the danger because we rely entirely on the assumption of professional competence. That lighthearted comment, intended for her friends on social media, was a rhetorical question meant to highlight her own bravery.
But tragically, it became a literal, devastating question.
It did. She was asking who allowed her to do this, assuming they were experts.
The gap between her joke and the reality of what was waiting for her is just staggering. So the location is a popular spot known locally as Skeleton Bridge. And what happened at Skeleton Bridge is, well, the news reports keep calling this an accident. But looking at the details from our sources, accident feels like entirely the wrong word.
I would agree with that.
Because an accident is a freak occurrence, a rope snapping under unprecedented pressure, or some microscopic flaw in a metal carabiner that no one could have seen with the naked eye. But that is not what happened to Maria.
No, the reality is much worse.
She was pushed off the bridge, and the safety bungee cord was never attached to her harness.
The primary singular piece of equipment required to make the activity survivable was omitted entirely.
Unbelievable.
She was sent over the edge with nothing anchoring her to the bridge.
I just cannot wrap my head around it. This is like, I don't know, a pilot taking off without putting fuel in the plane, or a surgeon starting an operation without sterilizing a single tool. How does a team whose entire specific job is attacking a rope simply forget the rope?
It's hard to fathom.
It goes so far beyond an accident. It is incomprehensible negligence.
Well, to understand how this happens, we have to look at the mechanics of human error in high-stakes environments. There's a vast difference between equipment failure and catastrophic human negligence.
Okay, break that down for me.
So equipment failure happens when materials degrade. But catastrophic human negligence, specifically in repetitive tasks, often stems from something called operational blindness or routine complacency.
Routine complacency.
Right. When an operator performs the exact same sequence of physical actions 50 or 100 times a day, checking a harness, clipping a carabiner, giving the countdown, their brain actually begins to automate the process to save cognitive energy.
Oh, I get it. It becomes muscle memory. Like when you drive home from work and pull into your driveway, but you have no actual memory of the last 5 miles of the trip.
Exactly. Your brain just went on autopilot.
Wow, yeah. That is terrifying in this context.
It is a perfect analogy, though. The brain relies on established schemas. If the operator's internal script says, "I have put the harness on the jumper, therefore the rope must be attached," their brain can literally fail to process the visual information that the rope is lying on the ground.
They just don't see it.
Right. They stop seeing the individual components of the task and only see the sequence. The danger becomes invisible to them because the routine has anesthetized their awareness.
But the danger wasn't invisible to everyone. And the source material provides a detail that makes this even more horrifying.
The video.
Yeah, there's a disturbing video that went viral on social media capturing the jump. Her fiancé was actually there, witnessing the whole thing unfold, along with other bystanders.
It's a devastating piece of evidence.
And in that footage,
Yeah.
as she is thrown off the edge, you can hear a witness screaming in alarm. They shout, "Guys, the rope!" while physically pointing at the unused cord left behind on the platform.
That audio fundamentally changes how we analyze the failure. It proves that the missing lifeline wasn't obscured. It wasn't hidden inside a mechanical housing or something.
Oh, it was right there.
It was entirely visible to an untrained eye.
Guys, the rope. It is just gut-wrenching. An untrained bystander, someone simply watching the event, immediately recognized that the lifeline was missing, while the operators, the individuals physically handling the jumper, missed it completely.
Because the bystander is not operating under a repetitive schema, they are taking in novel visual information in real time.
They're actually looking at the scene.
Yes. They look at the platform, they see a person stepping to the edge, and they see a thick bungee cord lying completely unattached on the ground. Their brain processes the raw reality of the scene.
Whereas the operators' brains are basically hallucinating a completed checklist.
Precisely. It points to a profound breakdown in basic situational awareness. They were going through the motions without actually seeing what was in front of them.
And the consequence of them going through the motions was a 130-foot fall. She fell 130 feet to her death. She was pronounced dead at the scene.
Just a horrific outcome.
And then the story takes a turn that I don't think anyone would anticipate. I mean, usually after a tragedy like this, you expect a certain sequence of events.
You expect a standard protocol.
Right. You expect the operators to be in absolute shock. You expect them to call emergency services, lock down the site, cooperate with authorities. Because even if you make a catastrophic error, you're still a professional business dealing with a fatality.
But that's not what happened.
No. What happened next turns this from a tragic story of operational failure into something that feels like a true crime documentary.
The immediate aftermath took a very chaotic and legally severe turn. The authorities launched a criminal investigation into the incident right away. 6 people connected to the Bungee operation were arrested.
6 people?
Yes, and 3 of them were actually present at the jump site when it happened.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. It's the reaction of 2 of those suspects that tells us a massive story about the kind of operation this was. Because they didn't stay to help.
No, they didn't.
They didn't wait for the police or try to explain what went wrong. They ran. They attempted to flee the scene entirely, disappearing into a nearby wooded area.
Fleeing the scene of a fatal incident is a massive escalation. It completely transforms the narrative from a context of a terrible workplace accident into the realm of criminal evasion.
It's wild.
It took a coordinated police helicopter search to hunt them down and detain them in those woods.
Let's just pause on that image for a second.
Right.
A police helicopter manhunt for bungee jump operators. Like running into the woods like literal bank robbers.
It says everything you need to know.
It really does. It shows they were operating on the absolute fringes of the law. No permits, no insurance, just a cash grab in the woods. When a company is legitimate, heavily regulated with safety officers and a corporate structure, their employees don't sprint into the forest when something goes wrong.
They face the liability.
Exactly. The fact that their immediate instinct was flight tells us they knew their operation couldn't withstand even a second of legal scrutiny.
Their flight is the ultimate indicator of a fundamentally illegitimate enterprise. It strongly suggests they lacked the proper operational permits, the mandated training certifications, and the necessary liability insurance.
They knew they were caught.
Right. They weren't acting like professionals facing a catastrophic error. They were acting like fugitives who knew they were already operating outside the bounds of the law. This really exposes the dark underbelly of the thrill-seeking industry, where these pop-up operators can just monetize a natural landmark without any regulatory oversight.
So what does this all mean? Why does this story from Sao Paulo matter to you, listening to this deep dive right now?
It matters a lot more than people might think.
It matters because adventure tourism is a massive global industry, and millions of us participate in it every single year. You go on vacation, you want a memorable experience, and you look for a thrill.
Of course. It's human nature.
Right. And this incident has sparked widespread outrage across Brazil. Investigators are working to figure out the mechanics of this specific oversight. But more importantly, it has renewed intense concerns over safety regulations at adventure sports sites globally.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the fallout is nationwide in Brazil, but the implications are really universal. There is a fundamental, ongoing tension in the adventure tourism industry between consumer demand and bureaucratic oversight.
It's a tug of war.
Exactly. On one hand, you have the soaring consumer demand for extreme experiences. People want the adrenaline spike, the unique social media content, the bragging rights of having faced their fears.
Everyone wants that perfect Instagram shot.
Right. But on the other hand, you have the slow, methodical machinery of government regulation meant to keep those people alive.
And the demand for thrills moves at the speed of an Instagram trend, while government safety regulations move at the speed of paperwork.
That's the danger gap.
Yeah. An operator can find a tall bridge, set up a jump site, build a slick website, market it heavily online, and start collecting money long before a government inspector ever realizes they exist.
And the visual aesthetics of modern marketing hijack our risk assessment. I mean, we see a well-designed logo, matching staff T-shirts, high-definition promotional video.
Matching T-shirts always get me. It just looks so official.
Exactly. Our brains automatically equate that slick presentation with professional competence and rigorous safety standards. We assume that because it looks official, it must be regulated.
And that is the terrifying part of the waiver we all sign. Think about the last time you were on a trip, maybe in a different country or just a few towns over, and you signed up for a zip line or a cliff jump.
They hand you the clipboard?
They hand you a clipboard. You skim the legal jargon, you sign your name, and you hand it back. In our minds, we think that waiver is just protecting the company from a lawsuit if we sprain an ankle or something.
We view it as a mere formality.
Exactly. A formality within a highly regulated system. We assume someone, somewhere, inspected the wire. We assume the person clipping the carabiner passed a certification test. We are blindly trusting an invisible regulatory safety net.
And this tragedy shatters that assumption entirely.
It really does. It shows us that sometimes that system simply does not exist.
You are placing your life in the hands of the most aggressive marketer rather than the most qualified safety expert.
Wow, yeah.
And the outrage we're seeing in the source material stems from this broken social contract. The public fundamentally expects the government to ensure that businesses offering extreme, life-threatening sports are rigorously vetted before they are allowed to operate.
It shouldn't be a free-for-all.
No, it shouldn't. When a young student can be pushed off a 130-foot bridge without the most basic piece of safety equipment attached, it destroys the illusion that anyone is actually watching the watchman. It proves that the barrier to entry for setting up a lethal activity can be terrifyingly low.
It makes the danger we talked about at the beginning entirely real. It completely strips away the illusion.
It does.
So let's take a moment to recap the journey we've been on in this deep dive, because it is a heavy progression to process. We started with Maria, a 21-year-old physical education student who understood sports management, posting a nervous, lighthearted joke about jumping off a bridge.
A joke that assumed competence.
Right. And then we explored the horrifying reality of Skeleton Bridge, where the psychological phenomenon of operational blindness led operators to push her off a ledge without attaching the bungee cord, completely ignoring the frantic screams of bystanders who could clearly see the danger.
And from that catastrophic failure, we watched the situation devolve into a literal true crime scenario, with operators fleeing the scene and being tracked down by police helicopters in the woods.
Which exposed the unregulated fringe nature of the whole operation.
Exactly.
Ending with an entire nation questioning the adventure tourism industry, and reminding all of us of the universal vulnerability we accept when we sign a waiver on vacation, assuming a safety net exists. It really makes you realize how fragile the whole setup of extreme tourism truly is.
It does. And as we wrap up our analysis of these sources, there is a profound psychological reality we have to confront about why we seek out these experiences in the first place.
Yeah, why do we even do it?
Well, when we pay for extreme sports, we are essentially paying to rehearse our own survival. We want the visceral, blood-pumping feeling of defying death. We want to look over the edge of the abyss, feel the primal terror of the drop, and then step back into our normal lives completely unharmed.
It's all for the rush.
But to achieve that incredibly specific emotional high, we rely entirely on the unwavering competence of a complete stranger. So the next time you step up to a ledge, ready to hand your life over for a momentary adrenaline rush, it is worth asking yourself, what guarantees that the person clipping you in is paying any more attention to your survival than you are?
Okay, one question for you. In what ways does the victim's final social media post add an emotional and psychological layer to the tragedy? And how do such posts influence public reaction, media coverage, and online discussions after sudden accidents like this? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.